Welcome to the video. Today we're going to be looking at making a lo-fi hip-hop beat sort of from scratch. We'll be using mostly Logic stuff. I'll show you how I create it because there's so many different variations on how exactly you can make lo-fi hip-hop beats. This is just how I do it in particular. Hopefully you pick some stuff up from it. So typically I'll start with the piano or the guitar, whichever one's going to be my main melody, and I'll sort of build it from the ground up from there. Then I'll put the drums on, usually last, to be honest. I find that it's a lot easier with the almost completed melody to find the best drum beat for it. So what we'll do is we'll start off with the piano. So here's what we've got so far. We're going to open up Labs. So Labs is a free software by Spitfire Audio. Absolutely download it. It's free. It sounds amazing, especially the soft piano, which is what we're going to be using today. So we're going to turn the reverb up just a little bit just to get that nice sound. Sounds great. It's a free piano. So I think it sounds really good so far. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it all the way through and then I'm going to quantize it just so it's spot on the beat. So we'll record that in now. We're going to probably put this down to about 90 BPM. There are so many different BPMs that a lo-fi hip-hop track could be, so it really depends on your piece. Generally speaking, if you're making the sort of typical lo-fi hip-hop, it can't really be over, say, 110 unless you're doing like a half-time feel, because it just sounds too fast and it's not the right level of energy. Something to keep in mind anyway. And I'm just going to record this in. I'm just going to go crazy with it. I'm going to drop it an octave because I think that will sound better. Let's try that. I think that sounds much better. Let's try that. So it sounded okay. I'll be able to go through now and make any changes, that I want to the melody. This isn't really the part that I want to emphasize on because you'll create your own melody. This is just for this demonstration purposes. This is the sort of sound that I want to achieve here. So I'm just going to go through and fine tune this. Probably speed this up, to be honest, just to make this video as short as possible. Yeah, so that works, and essentially we're going to be copying and pasting this throughout the whole thing. Typically, lo-fi hip-hop beats are about 2 minutes long, 2 to 3 minutes. What I'll do now is I'm just going to repeat this because I think it'll sound better. So as you can see here, I played the melody twice, which is nice because it adds variation to the playing. What I'm going to do is if you are using Logic, press Command and R, and it's just going to duplicate it, which is exactly what we need at the moment. And also remember to save it because I don't want to lose this. So what we need next is a sub, so I'm going to look to add that now. So I really like the sound of this sub, so what we're going to do is we're going to use this in the piece. I'm just going to get a general feel for the bass line. I'm going to record something in just so I've got it written down, but I may not keep it in the end. We'll see. So it sounds good, but I think that there should be an intro before the sub comes in. I think the sub should come in with the kick. I feel like that's quite a common thing in lo-fi hip-hop. So what we'll do is we'll just shorten this, just so there's no loose ends. So that hotkey was Command and T, just to shorten it, and then I press delete. So I'll just move this there. So literally just there. So that's fine. And what we'll do is I feel that there should be, so once again, Command and R. I feel like there should be a pad in there as well. So it should be wider than the piano in the background. So we'll look to find a pad now. Again, I'll be skipping through this just because finding the certain plugins or synths or whatever you want to use isn't the important part of this video. It's more the concept and creating it. So let's find a pad anyway. So for this pad, I think I want more a slower attack, basically, because it seems to just hit too quickly. Like, I kind of want it to fade into this this sound, and I don't want to have to fade it for every single note that I play. So look for the attack filter on the synth itself, and that will allow a sweeping motion rather than just like a straight attack. So. See, I think that sounds great, but I don't know if it works in the context of the piece. So what I'll do is I'll put that in now and I'll give that a go. Oh, that's so coming in, come on! I was too busy shouting that I played the wrong note. Here we go. Because it's all MIDI and we can change it afterwards. It's great. So essentially, it's just another case of cleaning it up, making sure it sounds mint. So I'll go through and do that now. And you may be thinking, it doesn't sound incredibly lo-fi yet. You're right, and I'll tell you why. Generally speaking, lo-fi refers to low fidelity, meaning it's a poorer quality than recording standards. Essentially what we're going to do, especially for the drums, we're going to low pass it just slightly so the top end isn't there. For the synths and for the piano, we're going to do something similar, especially for the piano. I'll be talking about a plugin called Isotope Vinyl, which is free, and it does basically 50% of the job. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add the Isotope Vinyl. You'll see what I mean. It sounds absolutely fantastic when it's on. So night and day difference. I'll show you that now. So I like to add a bit of mechanical noise and quite a bit of warp, to be honest. I quite like it when it's like 40-50%. This is really up to you. There's a lot of filters on here that I don't personally like very much, like the electrical noise. It's too overpowering for me, but again, there's so many different uses for it. It's just nice being there. So what I'll do as well is I'll change this to, we'll start with 1960. So we'll start with it off, and I'll show you. Now there's a significant difference there, and it's a much lower quality difference. But I think that sounds great. There's too much mechanical noise, so there's definitely something we can adjust. And I still feel like we need to take some of the top end off it. So I'll go into the EQ, bring that down a bit. Okay, so there I think that there should be another layer of piano. So this is sounding really good to me so far, but the thing that really distinguishes lo-fi hip-hop for me is the drums. So what we'll do is we'll work on those now. I'm going to unplug my MIDI controller and I'm going to use an iPad instead. I would film it, but unfortunately my GoPro has just died, so well, we're going to have to make do with that, unfortunately. So anyone who's just updated Logic will have noticed some big changes. So we won't talk about the step sequencer in this particular video. That's definitely something you can go down. Personally, I prefer to record the drums myself, so what we'll do is we'll have a quick look. It's not retro synth, it is Drum Machine Designer, and they've just brought out a load of new kits, which sound great. There's one that's really tailored towards lo-fi hip-hop, and I'll show you that now. So if you go down, you can look for the one that says Warm Breeze, and I'll just give you a quick sort of guide as to what it sounds like. What we'll be able to do though, as we did before, is we'll take the top end off and you'll instantly hear the difference. The sounds you can get with it. So quite an important part of the sound for lo-fi hip-hop is that the drums aren't incredibly in time. You should make sure that the kick and the snare, so the generally speaking, they should be in time. So that leading up to the beat. So like rather than it would be. So again, I'm just going to go through and adjust the drums itself just to make them sound a little bit more swung. So another really important part is the sort of the anime style vocals, or sort of loads of different film samples that you could use. Basically in the beginning, a lot of people use Rain. Now I tend to stray away from using copyright clips at all, even if they're really well hidden in a song. It's just not worth putting them in for me. So here's an audio sample from when I was in New York. I've recorded it on my phone, so I'm just going to chuck this in and add the isotope vinyl to it and just mess about with the effects just to make it sound better. So this is where you can get really creative with the sounds, because this isn't part of the melody as such. This is just an external element, so you can go all glitchy. You can tweak the settings, you know, more extreme on the isotope vinyl settings. So we'll do that now. So let's hear that in the context of the piece and see if that works. It's nice also to fade in with this sample. So you can either click on this or you can press T and it'll bring up that option. Fade, then drag down, and then there's a fade there. Really easy. So this is all in mono so far, and that's the biggest problem. So we need to make sure that this has got some stereo width to it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through and duplicate certain elements and just put them left and right, just because I think that'll make it sound better. So here's an interesting tip for anyone who might be new to Logic. So just moving this left and right, it does pan it, but it's panning it off balance. It's not panning it as in a true stereo pan. If you were to go down to here and then hold Control and click, you can click on stereo pan, and that will allow you to put that into a stereo pan essentially. Now you always need to be careful with phase when you're doing this particular method. So you can duplicate and then, you know, chuck them either side. If you go to your stereo out, if you go down to audio units, make sure you install this because it's a free software. It's great. It is Flux Stereo Tool. And essentially, we need this red square to go all the way to the right. That means that it's not phasing with each other. If it goes to the left, even if it's around here, you're sort of in uncharted territories. I want to put a compressor on this piano because I feel like we're losing some of the finer details. So we're going to put a compressor on, and we'll put it really light compression, so minus 10 dB on the threshold. I'm going to put it to 1.4. I'm going to turn this to 0 and then bring it down a little bit. So really there's two more things that we need to do to this. So we need to make sure that the bass is sidechained to the kick. So that's really important, just so the kick still comes through even though that bass is sort of in similar frequency range as that kick is. And another thing is, before any of that, we need to, because we've got a drum pad open here, we need to split these up. So there is a way to do a stereo out. However, personally, I typically tend to, I mean, especially when we've only got really three or four samples that we need to do it with, I'll just split it up into 4 different MIDI channels and then do it that way. So I'll show you what I mean. And essentially, it's just a case of copying it, dragging it down whilst holding Option, duplicates it. I've done that wrong. There we go. And you probably don't want to play it at this time because it will be 4 versions of the same sound, which is going to be very loud. Let's try it. As you can see, it's clipping by 4.7 decibels. So we're going to go through and just delete what we don't need. This looks like a really monotonous process, but it's actually not that bad because you can see they're all named on the side anyway. So there's the kick done. There's the snare done. So everything's split up into the right channel now, so it's just a case of going through and EQing it, compressing it, mixing it as you normally would. Basically, it's just whatever fits your sound, really. So just mix it until you feel comfortable with it. Make sure to use reference tracks as well. So after about an hour and a half, I'd say, of producing, this is what we've come up with. It could definitely do with more fine tuning, and you can really go in detail with the mix, but as a whole, I mean, for the first, say, 30 seconds or so, I think it sounds pretty good. Let's take a listen. So I hope that's helped. If you're looking to make lo-fi hip-hop beats, I hope that's made it a little bit clearer for you. Follow me on Twitch. I live stream quite a lot, and I do talk about lo-fi stuff quite a bit. So if you have any more questions, pop into the stream, give me a follow, anything like that. Again, thanks for watching though. I hope you enjoyed the video.